Hello everyone, and welcome back to Be Like Christ. Whether you are on Earth or 200 years in the future watching this from the Martian colony, welcome. Today we are talking about Judges chapter 14. Judges 14, and we're talking about Samson, who we were introduced to in the last chapter. He was born in the last chapter. This chapter, he grows up a little bit. So let's jump into Judges 14. The PDF is on the screen, but you can also download it on the website at tobelikechrist.com. When did these events take place? Well, the period of the Judges spans several hundred years, and most people place it between 1450 BC and 1000 BC. As we consult our map and try to locate these events, Samson's parents lived in a city called Zorah in the territory of Dan, and then Samson is going to marry a woman from the city of Timnah. Both of those locations you can see on the map. Now, our main character in this chapter is Samson. He was the 13th judge of Israel, and his birth was announced by the angel of the Lord in the last chapter. We're going to talk a little bit about Manoah and his wife, who were Samson's parents, and then Samson's wife. Samson's going to get married in this chapter. He married a Philistine woman from the area, or from the city of Timnah. And then 30 Philistine men. These 30 Philistine men were guests at Samson's wedding, who he challenged with a riddle. That takes us over to our outline, our first section, verses 1 through 9, Samson finds a wife. So when Samson grew up, he went to the city of Timnah and he found a girl that he wanted to marry, a Philistine girl, mind you, not an Israelite woman. And his parents initially objected to the marriage because they wanted him to marry an Israelite woman, and I think God wanted that as well, but he insisted. And we're told that although I don't think God wanted this union, and Samson's parents didn't agree with the union, God was going to use the marriage of Samson and this Philistine to begin the process of freeing the Israelites from the Philistine oppression. So when Samson was on his way to Timnah to get to know this woman a little bit better before the marriage, he was approached by a young lion on the road. And we're told that the Spirit of God came on him and he killed the lion barehanded. And just a fun fact, you might say, well, there are no lions in Israel. Actually, there used to be, and there used to be lions here where I live in North Africa, the Berberi lions, but they are now extinct. In some cases, I think they were hunted into extinction. If you look at the history of the Assyrians, they were really big into lion hunting. So Samson killed this lion that approached him. Later, he returned to the carcass of the lion, and he found a swarm of bees there, and they had made some honey. Samson took some of the honey, he ate it himself, and then he gave some to his parents. The second half of this chapter, verses 10 through 20, Samson's Riddle. This is a somewhat famous story in the Bible. Samson had a 7-day wedding feast, and 30 men were invited to accompany him at this wedding, to be his companions, I believe the text says. And he challenged these 30 companions with a riddle, and he said, if you can guess the riddle, then I will give each of you a linen garment and a change of clothes. But if you can't guess the riddle, you each have to give me a linen garment and a change of clothes. They agreed to take this challenge, and Samson told them the riddle, and it went like this, quote, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." Well, they racked their brains around this, and 4 days into the wedding feast, they couldn't come up with the answer. And so they went to Samson's new wife, and they threatened her with death if she could not extract the answer from Samson. Really nice guys these guys were. Probably fearing for her life, she harassed Samson so much that on the 7th day of the feast, he told her the answer. Dumb. This will not be the only time Samson does something dumb in the presence of a woman that he likes. That seemed to be his weakness. The 30 Philistine men then, after receiving the answer, gave it to Samson on the 7th day of the feast, and he knew how they had gotten it. So Samson was furious about this, but he was still going to keep his word, and so he went to a city called Ashkelon, and he killed 30 Philistine men and brought back their clothes and gave their clothes to the 30 wedding guests. Samson then was enraged. He left his wife and he went back to his father's house. And in his absence, his father-in-law gave his wife to another man because he thought that Samson hated her. That'll come up again in the next chapter. And so that is Judges chapter 14. Now let's talk about an application. How often are we like Samson's wife? She was married to the most powerful man in the world at that time, and yet she allowed the threats of lesser men to scare her into betraying him. In this chapter, Samson killed 30 men like it was nothing, just to take their clothes. In the next chapter, we're going to read about Samson killing 1,000 1,000 men with nothing but a primitive weapon. So Samson's wife was either ignorant about his strength or she forgot about it in the face of the threats that she was receiving. We have a special relationship with the most powerful force in existence, God. God is our ally, but we often forget and give in to the threats and the temptations put before us by mere men. In our moments of trial, we need to remind ourselves that the power is with us and that the forces that threaten us are pathetic in comparison to the God who protects us.